Good evening, everyone. This is Dr. Ray Strand, and tonight we are going to talk about how to optimize your fat loss using the RX weight management system. And I'm excited about tonight, and I'm just glad that you could join us. For those who don't know who I am, I'm a physician. I've been in a private family practice now for 40 years. I was trained at the University of Colorado Medical School, graduated in 1971, went to finish my training at Mercy Hospital in San Diego, California, and I now practice in Rapid City, South Dakota. I am RX's Chief Medical Officer. I'm a published author, and I speak worldwide on health and preventive medicine and nutritional medicine. So I'm excited to present to you today and this evening about exactly how you can use the RX weight management program to optimize fat loss and improve your health at the same time. Physicians know that the way you live your life, how you eat, do you exercise, do you not exercise, are you a smoker, how much do you drink, do you take nutritional supplements? All of these lifestyles are risk factors for chronic degenerative diseases and pretty much determines what type of illness I as a physician would be treating in my office later in life or any time. We know that your lifestyles significantly affect your risk for heart disease, stroke, high blood pressure, cancer, diabetes, osteoporosis, and the list goes on and on. And so physicians have always been interested in lifestyles, encouraging their patients to have healthier lifestyles. But today, we find ourselves in the midst of a diabetes obesity epidemic. And about a third of the people in the US and Canada today are trying to lose weight, and another third are at least trying to maintain their weight. In the US alone, we are spending over $30 billion each and every year on diets and weight management programs. However, when you look at the medical literature, and I don't care what diets you're talking about, whether it's Jenny Craig, Weight Watchers, Atkins, or the list goes on and on, if you follow those people, if you're able to lose any weight with a diet, 2/3 will gain that weight back within 1 year. And then if you go out 2 years, 98% of diets fail. So we are not getting much for our time, our money, and our effort when it comes to weight loss. And so the first question you should be asking yourself is, why don't diets work? Well, I will tell you that diets don't work for several reasons, but one of the reasons is they're a short-term solution for a long-term problem. Now, what do I mean by that? Well, I mean that if a patient of mine comes in and say, oh, Dr. Strand, I'm going to go on such and such a diet. Well, the connotation is if they're going to be going on a diet, somewhere in the future they're going to be coming off that diet, and they usually return to that poor lifestyle that got them into trouble in the beginning. But another reason diets fail is because the majority of diets are not balanced. They're not healthy diets. Atkins' diet eliminates all carbohydrates. Dr. Ornish eliminates all fat. All fad diets end up in failure. But the main reason diets do not work is because they do not tackle the core problem of the obesity epidemic, which is insulin resistance. In other words, over time, because of our poor lifestyles and inactivity, you become less and less sensitive to your own insulin. We call this eventually metabolic syndrome. You actually tip into an abnormal metabolic state, which we now refer to as prediabetes. When you tip over into this abnormal state, you start gaining an unusual amount of weight around your middle. We call that central obesity. You develop high blood pressure. That good HDL cholesterol drops and that very bad VLDL cholesterol goes up. The other fat in your body, called triglycerides, goes up, and you're at significantly increased risk of developing both heart disease and diabetes. So this is not a rare problem. In fact, in the Journal of American Medical Association, they have shown that nearly 25% of all adults in the US and Canada have the metabolic syndrome. And in fact, another 25% are in the early stages of developing the metabolic syndrome or prediabetes. So over half the population is struggling with this, and it's probably the cause of over 90% of the patients or individuals who have a weight problem. Now, this has led the Center for Disease Control to project that a third of the children born today or after the year 2000 in the U.S. will become diabetic sometime in their lifetime. If they happen to be black or Hispanic, nearly 50% will become diabetic. Now, when I was in training back at the University of Colorado Medical School in 1971, I remember my pediatrician coming up to me, or my professor, and saying, you know, if you diagnose anybody with diabetes under the age of 35, they have type 1, or what we used to refer to as juvenile diabetes. And you would be right 98% of the time. But over the years now, we're finding children are becoming insulin resistant and developing type 2 diabetes. In fact, we now know that about 45% of our children who are becoming diabetic today are getting the adult onset type of diabetes. And in fact, we're seeing it as young as age 6. So we are in the midst of the diabetes obesity epidemic. But how did we get here? Well, you know, the medical community believes in a 1901 theory regarding how fast sugars are absorbed into the body. In the 1901 theory, they talked about simple sugars versus complex carbohydrates. You see, carbohydrates are simply long chains of sugar that break down and become glucose in the bloodstream. And so the theory was the longer that chain of sugar was, the harder it would take, or the longer it would take for the body to break that blood sugar, or break that down and raise your blood sugar. And so we called long chain carbohydrates complex carbohydrates, and we felt they were fine. And simple sugars, those short chains like table sugar, which is 2 molecules, would break down very quickly and be absorbed. Well, in 1981, Dr. David Jenkins out of the University of Toronto challenged this conventional wisdom, and he actually just put this theory to the test. All he did was simply give participants in his studies a particular carbohydrate, and then just check the rise in blood sugar following that consumption of that particular carbohydrate, and then compared it to the rise in blood sugar of glucose, and the percentage became the glycemic index. So just to show that, he actually gave a load of glucose and measured it, and he gave glucose rise a glycemic index of 100. Well, then he would take a food like bread or flour, cereal, potato, and in this case, sweet cherries, and measured it. And sweet cherries had a 22% rise compared to glucose. Therefore, it has a glycemic index of 22. Now, that's how you hear about the glycemic index and being low glycemic and high glycemic. Well, we believe any food that has a glycemic index under 40 would be considered low glycemic. A glycemic index between 40 to 60 would be a moderate glycemic index, and anything above 60 would be high glycemic. So let's just look at some representative foods. So here you see glucose has a glycemic index of 100, but look at the baked potato. It has a glycemic index of 85. Almost all your cereals, like cornflakes, have a glycemic index in the 80s. Rices have a glycemic index in the 80s. Whole wheat bread has a glycemic index of 71. White bread is about 70. But look at table sugar. That simple sugar only had a glycemic index of 61. And then you look at foods like peaches or sweet cherries, apples, plums. They have a glycemic index in the 20. Black beans in the 20. So all of a sudden, you start to realize foods like bread and flour and rice and cereal and potatoes actually spike your blood sugar faster than if you're slapping table sugar on your tongue. Now, this was a shock to the medical community, and even to this day, the registered dietitians, the medical community, does not want to accept the glycemic index. They would rather rely on a 1901 theory of how we absorb sugars. And so today, 85 to 90% of the carbohydrates the children and adults are consuming in the U.S. and Canada, and in a large part of the world today, even in Asia, Australia, are highly processed and high glycemic. So foods like I said, bread, cereals, rice, potatoes, actually spike your blood sugar faster than if you were eating straight table sugar. Now, why is that important? Well, when you eat a high glycemic food, your blood sugar rises very, very rapidly. And so what happens is that we can see that the blood sugar rises very rapidly here and goes up. Well, the body must control blood sugar in a very narrow range. Now, here's where your blood sugar started. This is called a fasting blood sugar right there. And so when you eat a high glycemic breakfast, for example, if you go out and have a bagel and orange juice and a cup of coffee, a white bagel has a glycemic index in the 80s, so your blood sugar will rise very rapidly. But since we think on blood sugar, the body must control blood sugar in a very narrow range. So this rapidly rising blood sugar stimulates the release of insulin. You have to remember, insulin is your storage hormone. And so insulin's job is to transport that sugar into the cell to either be utilized as energy or stored as glycogen or fat. Well, what people don't realize is that blood sugar comes down almost as fast as it goes up because we overstimulate the release of insulin. And here's what's key. You drop below the fasting blood sugar into the low blood sugar range, or what we call hypoglycemia. Now, if this blood sugar was allowed to keep going on down, 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 what happens is you not only can get a shaky weakness, but you can literally have a seizure or go into a coma. So the body must protect against that, and this low blood sugar stimulates the release of what we call our stress hormones, like adrenaline and cortisol, to drive this blood sugar back up to normal. But what most people don't realize is even though this blood sugar does come back to normal, you now have these high stress hormones floating around in your bloodstream. And so what happens is this causes you to have an uncontrollable hunger. In other words, you have to eat again. You don't have any choice. And so you usually crave another high glycemic meal, and this vicious cycle just starts all over again, and we just keep repeating this over and over again. So what you have been calling emotional eating and cravings all of these years is simply the natural hormonal response to spiking your blood sugar. So the greatest drug you put in your body is in your food or at the end of your fork or spoon. And so what you need to learn is that not only does this rapidly rising blood sugar lead to this uncontrollable hunger. In fact, the medical literature shows you spike your blood sugar one time, and it can set off this uncontrollable hunger up to 2 to 3 days. So you may just mess up once, and the next day or two you're just looking around for food. But there's another thing that happens. When this blood sugar rises very rapidly, they've shown studies that basically this rapidly rising blood sugar actually causes inflammation in your arteries. We call it glycemic stress because of excess of free radicals, but it causes, for example, that breakfast I told you about, they have done studies where you go out and you have, you have a meal like a bagel, an orange juice, and a cup of coffee. Your arteries literally go into spasm from this inflammation for 4 to 5 hours after that meal. Now, they know that it's free radicals that cause it because in the same study, they will give those same participants vitamin E and vitamin C in supplementation. Then they go have their bagel and orange juice, and their arteries only go into spasm for 4 to 5 minutes because vitamin E and vitamin C are antioxidants that can neutralize those free radicals and render them harmless. So this is the high glycemic roller coaster ride, and I told you 80%, 90% of the carbohydrates we're consuming, this is going on. But there's more things you need to know. Dr. Ludwig actually took 12-year-old children, and they were boys, and they actually said, okay, we're going to give you either a low glycemic breakfast, which happened to be a veggie omelet and fruit, or they gave them a high glycemic breakfast, which was instant oatmeal, and it was the same amount of calories. Then they said, kids, just go out and eat what you want the rest of the day, and they just kept track of it. Well, the children that had the high glycemic meal ate 80% more calories the rest of the day than the children that had the low glycemic meal. That is critical. In fact, they switched the groups, and they found this it was due to the meal and not the groups. And so these high glycemic meals increase and promote food cravings. In fact, the medical literature calls it a true carbohydrate addiction. And that is there. Now, I am not promoting a low carbohydrate diet, but I want you to understand there are good carbohydrates and there are bad carbohydrates. Now, just take a look at the USDA food pyramid. Now, this becomes important so you can understand why we're in the midst of this diabetes obesity epidemic. But you look here, we have at the base, look at this, 6 to 11 servings of bread, cereal, rice, and pasta. I've just shared with you. Those are worse than sugar. Where do we put sugars? Well, we put sugars up here in the top, up here at the peak, because we know sugars are bad, okay? But yet then we tell you to eat this bread, cereal, and pasta, 6 to 11 servings a day, and they're worse than sugars. In fact, Dr. Walter Willett, the head of nutrition and preventive medicine at Harvard, put in his book, Eat, Drink, and Be Healthy, that the USDA food pyramid should actually look like this. It should be a T, because those foods are worse than sugar. So this is something you need to know. So at the base of the food pyramid should be whole fruits and whole vegetables, nuts, legumes are good fats, and bad fats. We need to learn that, and obviously we need to decrease our sugars. But it's the enemy is highly processed grains and foods and the all-American white potato. Those are the ones that are high glycemic, they have a lot of calories, and have led us to overeating. So that's the dilemma. Now, it's important for you to realize that insulin resistance, over the years of abusing that insulin, spiking that blood sugar, what happens, it's kind of like hollering wolf all the time. You just keep spiking the blood sugar and stimulating the release of insulin over and over and over again, and finally your body just becomes less sensitive to your own insulin. So people might abuse insulin for 10, 15 years, and then they finally tip over into this early insulin resistance. So as this orange line, as you see insulin resistance going up, what happens is insulin production starts to go up. Your body actually compensates for this by making more and more insulin. But as long as these two lines parallel each other, you'll find that your blood sugar, the blue line, stays steady. In other words, it does not go up. Now, physicians tend to look at blood sugars, but what happens is when that blood insulin level rises, remember, it's your storage hormone. What happens is blood sugar goes up. your blood pressure goes up. Triglycerides, that other fat in the blood, goes up. The HDL cholesterol goes down, and you start gaining this unusual amount of weight around your middle. Now, this graph lasts about 10 to 15 years, but pretty soon the old body just can't keep making that much insulin, and finally blood insulin levels start to go down and blood sugars start to go up, and here's where doctors diagnose diabetes. The problem is, as soon as you tip over into this insulin resistance, your arteries begin aging about a third faster than they should. So by the time we diagnose diabetes way over here, what happens is the fact that 60% of our patients already have major cardiovascular disease. Now, why is that important? Well, 80% of our diabetics are dying today from what we call a cardiovascular event, like a heart attack or a stroke, and they're dying prematurely. Nothing has changed in spite of all of our drugs, all of our treatments, and it's because we need to start checking people and helping them back here. Now, the American Association of Endocrinology has said we need to be treating this prediabetes as aggressively as we do the diabetes, and we do that by intensive lifestyle changes. Well, this is RX's weight management system because they recognize this problem. And so, yes, we want fat loss, we want weight loss, but we also want to improve your health. But here's something you have to realize, that when you tip over into this abnormal metabolic state, a calorie is no longer a calorie. In other words, we're going against the mantra of the weight loss industry for the past half century. Calories in has to equal calories out or be less, or you can't lose any weight. You see, when you start to become insulin resistant, the muscle becomes insulin resistant first. Now, why is that important? Well, the muscle normally takes up 85 to 90% of all the calories from any meal or snack, and you utilize them as energy. Well, when you tip over into this abnormal metabolic state, the muscle can no longer take in all that calories. So now many of the calories that were utilized as energy are being diverted to the fat cells of your abdomen. Well, what's important about that is insulin's job is to also convert that glucose to fat and then block the release of fat. Remember, I told you that when you tip over into this abnormal metabolic state, that your insulin levels begin to rise, and this becomes your storage hormone. So people who have this central weight gain have tried every diet in the world, but they can't lose the weight effectively, or if they lose a few pounds, it comes right back on because you hold onto a fat like a sponge holds onto water. And one of the hallmark signs of having underlying insulin resistance is the fact that you can't lose weight. This is what frustrated all my patients. That's why I spent 3.5 years studying this problem back in the mid-1990s when all of this stuff was coming out. And now we're starting to realize that the Healthy for Life program and RX's weight management system really is a behavioral modification program that has 4 parts. First of all, you need a healthy diet, one that does not spike your blood sugar. We now have RX Slenderiix plus Accelerate, which actually increases the release of this fat and increases energy metabolism as it decreases your appetite. But then we do recommend modest exercise. You don't have to be a superstar. But here's the key. RX's optimals are critical in stopping this glycemic stress that leads to insulin resistance and improves insulin sensitivity. So let's go over each one of these. Now, when you start to eat a low glycemic meal, eating those whole fruits and vegetables and nuts and legumes and eating good fat, along and decreasing your bad fat, your blood sugar goes up, but it goes up very, very slowly. So number one, you don't overstimulate the release of insulin, and you eliminate that inflammation in your arteries. So what the medical literature shows, you have one meal that does not spike your blood sugar, insulin levels begin to drop after one meal. You have then the fat releasing hormone called glucagon starts to come up. So your fat releasing hormone, every hormone has an opposite hormone. So glucagon, that fat releasing hormone, starts to come up. So eating a diet like this increases fat loss or fat release. Well, yes, your blood sugar does come back to normal, or your fasting blood sugar right here, but you didn't drop into that hypoglycemic range, which sets off that stress hormones and leads to that uncontrollable hunger. And so you're going to find when you start RX's weight management program that natural appetite, because of the drops, because of the way you're eating, and because of all of this medical science that we're relying on, you're finding your natural appetite comes down, and within 3 to 5 days for the normal average person, you'll find that, gee, your appetite just starts coming down. And in fact, you're going to find you have trouble eating the 1,250 calories that we recommend in RX's accelerated phase 1. But when your blood sugar comes down, yes, you eat another low glycemic meal, and that's the key, and your insulin levels will drop again, glucagon comes up. So it's a critical way to improve insulin sensitivity. But we also want you to exercise. Now, if you've been out of shape or that, yeah, you don't want to just jump in and overdo, but we want you to build up the 30 minutes of modest aerobic activity 5 days per week. Now, it doesn't really matter what you do. You could do brisk walking, riding your bike, swimming, hiking, tennis, racquetball. It does not matter. But it is critical to know that aerobic activity is key to improving insulin sensitivity. Now, I'm not against weight resistance training or anaerobic activity or stretching or any of that, but it's just you have to add it to aerobic activity. It's the aerobic activity that significantly improves insulin sensitivity from a different mechanism. You see, the only thing that the body cannot handle is inactivity. That is key. So in RX's accelerated phase 1, we want you to at least walk 30 minutes 5 days a week. Now, not every day. The body does better if you allow it to rest a couple days. Now, I recommend, and you're going to see us recommend, even picking up a simple pedometer and just being more active throughout the day. That is critical. But we'd like you to get over 10,000 steps 5 days a week, or at least be doing that equivalent of aerobic activity. Now, the medical literature also shows that when you take in chromium in optimal levels, another mineral, vanadium, magnesium, selenium, and antioxidants like vitamin E and vitamin C, all of these studies show that you improve insulin sensitivity. This is why it is critical for optimal fat loss with RX's weight management system that you add the RX's optimals, at least the optimals. Now, I think adding Omega Q and adding Rejuvenex or adding Vanali are all good, but at least doing the RX optimals. This is critical because now you're improving insulin sensitivity from a different mechanism. You're helping prevent any glycemic stress, and this is key. But now you also have Slenderiix and Accelerate. Now, Slenderiix is a homeopathic drug. The FDA looks at homeopathic ingredients as a drug. That's the way the FDA looks at it. These must be produced in an FDA-registered facility that has the ability to produce also the over-the-counter drugs. Now, Slenderiix contains 10 different homeopathic ingredients that have been well studied, not only for the last 100 years, but put together in Slenderiix for that synergistic effect. 5 or 6, and I'm not exactly it's in that range of these homeopathic ingredients actually increase the release of fat from your fat cells. So not only does your diet, how you're eating, exercise, and nutritionals improve fat release, the homeopathic Slenderiix is going to actually increase it even further. 3 of the homeopathic ingredients actually suppress your appetite. So eating a low glycemic diet, you're going to decrease your natural appetite, but also the Slenderiix helps decrease your appetite. And then you have 2 of the ingredients that increase your metabolism. So you see the synergistic effect of taking Slenderiix. Now, Accelerate contains high doses of a very potent vitamin B12 for increased energy and metabolism. So they work well together. And so this is the 4th leg for those who want accelerated fat loss. So here's the keys to success. And we want to share for the first 2 days. You start the Slenderiix. We don't want you to change any of your eating habits. The reason is we just want you to eat the way you normally do for 2 days. So you start the Slenderiix and the Accelerate, but don't change anything for 2 days. Then on the 3rd day, and the reason you don't do that is that we're going to be able to recognize where you're storing most of your fat. Then on the 3rd day, you limit your caloric intake to 1,250 calories per day or less. Now, the key is we don't want anybody to get sick or get ill or do anything. But generally, 1,250 calories is not a very low calorie diet. Most of these programs, they want only 500 calories or at the most 700. But RX doesn't want to do that. We want more of a healthy lifestyle. So we only want you to limit to 1,250 calories, but you must limit it to that level to have optimal fat loss. The reason is we want the body to start releasing fat and using your fat stores for calories and energy. Well, the RX, Slenderiix, and all that are going to actually cause that to happen much easier. Well, anybody that understands detox, or they understand that the fat contains a lot of toxins, it is critical that you drink plenty of purified water. Getting a purity water bottle is ideal. Drinking 6 to 8 large glasses or bottles of purified water, carrying your purity water bottle with you all the time is key, because you have to stay well hydrated. Not only does it help you get rid of some of the toxins through the kidneys, but we have found that if you don't drink this much water, you don't lose as much with the Slenderiix or Accelerate. So that is key in optimizing your fat loss in this program. And again, you at least need to take the RX Optimals, not only for your health, not only for energy, but also to improve insulin sensitivity. Now, I recommend, and my Healthy for Life program recommends, that you have Pure Nourish meal replacements. These are key, and I'll share with a little bit when I get into the details of the total program. But Pure Nourish not only is GMO-free, it is dairy-free, gluten-free, soy-free, contains those potent digestive enzymes and probiotics for GI health, and allows for better absorption, not only of your nutritionals, but all your food. So that is key. And another key is you must exercise. The exercise is key. This allows you the 1,250 calories to exercise. Now, if someone just can't exercise for whatever reason, we would recommend, if they're paraplegic, or they're bedridden, or they just can't exercise, that you would drop back to 1,000 calories. But when you exercise for 30 minutes 5 times a week, this allows you to increase to 1,250 calories. And again, we want you to avoid all breads, flour, rice, cereals, potatoes, and sugar. You do these, and you do this and you stay with this program, you're going to find that over the first couple weeks, you're going to have trouble eating the 1,250 calories, eating the food, just because your natural appetite drops, plus the Slenderiix and everything else helps that. So, at the Healthy for Life program, healthconceptsint.com, I want you to understand this gives you more to give you support for better success. It's actually a behavioral modification program. We evaluate you, we'll educate you, we'll motivate you, we'll hold you accountable, and then document your improvement. This is a program that I have done 3 clinical trials, and we have seen amazing results. And now with Slenderiix and Accelerate, we're going to see even better results. But we need to teach you. Education is great on the role of blood sugar and how to protect your environment, how to have more success, how to incorporate a low glycemic lifestyle. We'll take you by the hand and guide you, but you also will motivate you every time you get a training or you see the health nuggets that we present. Plus, you get your own lifestyle journal where you can record how you're taking your optimals, how you're eating, and how you're doing the Pure Nourish, and how you're taking, how you're exercising, drinking fluid. So, and it's going to be automatically graded so that you can just help you in what you're doing. But here's RX's accelerated phase 1. So now we're going to just here are the principles. You want to take 10 to 15 drops of Slenderiix 20 to 30 minutes prior to your meals 3 times a day. And you put those under your tongue. You hold it under your tongue for 10-15 seconds before you swallow. You don't want to have any food or anything sweet or anything for, at least 10-15 minutes. So when you're thinking about eating, have your Slenderiix available. Now, I think this is key. And the same thing, the Accelerate, you want 15 drops, 20 to 30 minutes prior to your meals 3 times a day. Now, here's the key, especially for the men in the crowd. Women, you tend to put that in your purse. Men have trouble, but you're going to have to carry it either in your pocket, have it at the office, whatever, so that you don't miss a dose. It's critical that you do this 3 times a day to have the best result. Then what we want you to do is have 2 Pure Nourish, 2 scoops of Pure Nourish in either water, almond milk, or coconut milk, and that could be 8 to 10 ounces, along with some frozen fruit twice daily as your meal replacements. Now, when you do this, it's 130 calories for the 2 scoops. If it's in water, you can obviously have more frozen fruit, but almond milk actually comes at 35 calories, and that's the kind I'd recommend in your grocery stores. I mean, they put more sugar in, but get the low caloric. I think coconut milk is 60 calories, but even with the frozen fruit, this meal is going to be somewhere between 230 and 250 calories. But Pure Nourish is combining those low glycemic proteins and carbohydrates, and along with it's going to have the good fat. It's a wonderful meal replacement. Now, this meal is only going to cost you somewhere between $2.50 and $3 per meal. Now, you try to go out and eat a healthy meal at that cost. You just can't do it. And so what I find is that my patients and people in the clinical trials using these meal replacements actually lowered their food budget cost enough to actually allow them to have more money for their Slenderiix Accelerate and their optimals. But this now does not, you can pick which meals you want. It could be breakfast and your evening meal. It could be breakfast and lunch. It could be lunch and your evening meal. It does not matter. But then I would want you to have 1 low glycemic meal and 2 regular low glycemic snacks. So if you had 2 low glycemic snacks that average about 150 calories each, that's going to allow you somewhere in the range of 400 to 550 calories for that nice low glycemic meal once a day, which you could have with your family or something in that resort. But then again, remember, RX Optimals, just take as recommended on the bottles. There'll be 3 vitamins, 2 minerals in the morning with your morning meal, and again in the evening with your evening meal. Now, if you have trouble at night or something, you can always do it for breakfast and lunch, and that's fine. We want you to exercise. I say here walk briskly, but any aerobic activity, 30 minutes, 5 times per week. That is key. Then you want to drink 6 to 8 large glasses of purified water. Your purity bottle will come in wonderful with this. And then, here's key. I want you to avoid all breads, flour, rice, cereals, potatoes, pasta, and sugar. So if some of you have read the PDF file that's on RX's website, I want you to forget the recommended RX cereals for their breakfast, their example breakfast. I want you to avoid all grains. That is more when we get into a phase 2 or the maintain phase. So this is something that I want you to really consider, because these are your enemies. Processed grains and the almighty white potato are your problems. Now, pasta, even though it has a moderate glycemic index, the reason I put it on here is it's loaded with calories. The average serving for pasta is 2 ounces or half a cup. But you go to any Italian restaurant, they've done studies on this, the average serving you get at that restaurant, there's 8 to 10 servings of pasta. Well, that is going to spike your blood sugar. Plus, it's loaded with calories. So if you do this, boy, it allows you to eat all the whole fruits, all the whole vegetables, nuts, legumes, to have good lean meat or fish or vegetable protein. It's an easy program to do. You will not find yourself suffering. And you doing this, most people can expect 1 to 1.5 pounds weight loss per day. Now, I know that some people will lose weight much faster than others. And in fact, I wouldn't even encourage you to weigh yourself too often. We don't want to use weight loss as a motivator. We want you to think, hey, I'm trying to establish healthy lifestyles. This is key, because there are health benefits with RX's weight management system. First of all, we're going to reverse that glycemic stress or that inflammation in your arteries. We're going to decrease those carbohydrate cravings. Your natural appetite is going to come down. You're going to improve insulin sensitivity, so you're going to see your blood pressure go down, your cholesterol levels go down. You're going to begin losing that weight around your middle. You're going to start to see, if you have blood sugars that are up, they're going to go down. You're going to see a significant improvement in your health, and it's going to allow you to establish your healthy weight. So, RX's weight management system is not a diet, but it's a lifestyle. You see, we're not just going to lose weight, go back to the old way you're living. We're going to take you by the hand and guide you into these new healthy lifestyles that you continue the rest of your life. Now, granted, when you get into your phase 2 or what we call, just to maintain your weight, you're going to add back those healthy grains, healthy breads, healthy potatoes, healthy cereals, healthy rice. We'll teach you what those are so that you can maintain it. Remember, weight loss is great. However, keeping it off is priceless. And that's what you need to know about RX's Slenderiiz Accelerate. Now, if you want to get more information in regards just to all the research I've done into insulin resistance and the diabetes obesity epidemic, my personal feeling is RX's weight management system is the answer for the diabetes obesity epidemics. It is not just a weight loss program. Yeah, we enjoy fast weight loss. Everyone does. We want to get excited about it. But in the end, we want people to know that we want to keep this weight loss off. We don't want you to lose weight and then gain it right back. And that's why I would really encourage anybody that wants to get on the RX's weight management to go ahead and take advantage of a free month access to my Healthy for Life program at www.healthconceptsint.com/RX and join the Healthy for Life program. Now, I am in the process of developing trainings for the accelerated phase 1, which would be just what I've explained tonight. That is key. But, you know, take advantage of this. Look at it. You not only get all of my trainings where I talk about, it's a nutritional course that you learn, and you get, we get into what are those good low glycemic carbohydrates. I have a food database of 1,400 different foods where I label them as low, you know, as low, medium, or high. Now, what I did when I labeled those foods or categorized those foods, I not only looked at glycemic index, I looked at glycemic load, but I also looked at the quality of food. And so now I'm going back in because of RX accelerated plan, and I'm putting in the amount of calories per serving, so you can look those up. So this is something that is there. You get your own lifestyle journal. You get access to 28 of my trainings, plus I'm going to be adding more. And then you start to understand. So we give you support. So the key is to get that weight loss off and get it off quickly. I actually talk in there too about why some people plateau and why some people just have trouble losing weight, even though they seem they're doing things right, things you wouldn't even think about. For example, if you happen to be on an antidepressant, these SSRI antidepressants like Paxil or Prozac or those, they actually put weight on. My patients would gain 60, 80 pounds within 6 months of taking those drugs. Maybe you have just been placed on hormone replacement therapy and you're putting on, or you just came out of a pregnancy and you're putting weight on. It's just, I get into give you so much more information and insight. So take advantage of that. So what I want to do here is to now open this up to anybody who would like to ask ask me a question. We've got a few minutes here. I'm just going to take questions. You can go ahead. I've allowed you to ask questions, and then I've got some of these. I'll try to. Someone asked about what about quinoa? Well, that is a wonderful cereal or grain, and it is lower glycemic. But anyway, that's the main thing that I really find. But in this accelerated phase, I just get people off all grains, and the reason is those are your enemies. Those are the ones that create that uncontrollable hunger. So this is key thing here. Now, someone asked, what should I do if I plateau? Well, I really feel all parts fit together. If you're leaving out any part, if you're not exercising, if you're not staying under 1,250 calories, if you're not taking your optimals, and you're not taking the Slenderiix, you leave one of those out, you can plateau, believe it or not. So you have to be fairly aggressive. The other thing I find, if I get people, my patients, that are plateauing, what I find is that you go ahead and just maybe increase your exercise, burst your exercise. So like every 5th minute, if you're maybe walking briskly, let's say for about a 55 exertion level, then maybe between minute 5 and 6 you burst. For 1 minute, back off, and between minute 11 and 12 you do the same thing. Those are key things, but I think you've got to make sure you're honest with yourself. Someone asked, does yoga count as activity? Now, she said hot yoga. I'm not familiar with hot yoga. I don't care if there's aerobics involved. Anything that increases the heart rate will work. There's no doubt about that. And can kids have obesity problems use these products? Absolutely. There is nothing. These are safe. I didn't get into explaining homeopathic. I'm not a homeopathic doctor, but really what happens is in homeopathy, they find the more and more they dilute it, the more potent it becomes. Well, also the safer it becomes. So children can use this. Now, I don't know if I would use it. I know there's some restrictions as far as everything goes, but the key thing is, I find, and I have a lot of children that use this. Obviously, you'd have to adjust the optimals to size, and I've got that on my website, and everything that way. I have recorded this presentation. It will be put up on RX, and then I'm going to have trainings that I'll put up, and I will give an overview of all of this on my site. So yes, it will be available, and hopefully it'll be up on RX this whole conference. So you can use it, link it, and go that way. Then is brown rice better than white rice? Not always. Not always. Anyway, what happens is brown rice can be processed as much as white rice, just like white bread and brown bread have the same glycemic index, and in fact, some places brown bread is higher. So that's why we avoid it. Now, there are rices that are better, and eventually we tell you basmati rice is a moderate glycemic index, and then if you go to Uncle Ben's long rice, that's fine. Then RX's Slenderiix says do it 10 minutes. I mentioned 20 to 30 minutes. I like it a little bit better, but 10 minutes is fine. 10 minutes would be minimum. So yes, taking it 10 minutes, the Slenderiix, and accelerate before you eat is fine. And that's, to be honest, that's what most of us are going to do. It won't make a difference. You don't want to just take it and then eat. You want to give yourself at least 10 minutes. 20 would be more ideal. Someone asked, I want to lose 20 more pounds, and they only need to lose 20 pounds. Well, you know, the one thing you can do to lose that 20 pounds, if you're a little bit worried, one thing is you can go to what is, I consider, my phase 1. I'm talked to Deanna Latson and RX. We're going to try to call, you know, what I talked about tonight, the accelerated phase 1. Now, phase 1 on my program and in my books is simply everything except you don't count calories. And some people that only need to lose 8 to 10 pounds might just go on phase 1 for a while and do that. And they may not have to be, if they don't take the Slenderiix and that, they could just do that. But if you've got 20 pounds to lose, I would do the accelerated and go with that. Someone asked, is this product natural? You know, no, it's a homeopathic. Homeopathics are, you know, I don't want to call them natural drugs, but that's the way the FDA looks at it. They have active ingredients, but it's a whole different thing, and we'll educate you more on homeopathy. I didn't want to get into it too much, but it's a whole different approach versus allopathic medicine, which is what I practice because I'm a physician. What sweeteners do I like? I like xylitol and stevia. You can use them in your tea or your coffee. People ask about alcoholic drinks. Can I drink alcohol with it? Well, they've got calories, but alcohol by itself is low glycemic. But I would say it's got to be in moderation. A glass of wine. I'm not a fan of beer because it does have a lot of carbohydrates, unless you do an ultra low beer. Then I think that would be fine. How long does phase 1 last? That's a really good question. I say you stay in the accelerated phase 1 until you reach your health and weight goals. Now, that doesn't mean, you know, I realize there's a cost with the drops, but let's say you use you drops for a month or two, and you've lost 80% of your weight, and you're really happy, and your appetite's down, you're doing well. Well, you could go on to my phase 1, which is exactly the same, except you don't have to count calories. You just still avoid all breads, flour, rice, cereal, pasta, potatoes, and sugar. But you continue the optimals, your exercise, and all that. But then when you've reached your health and weight goals, either through the accelerated phase or my phase 1, then you go on and you actually, you go on to my phase 2. Someone asked about yogurt mix, Greek yogurt with berries, frozen berries. Absolutely. There is no problem. Obviously, you might want to get some of the Greek yogurts are wonderful. Make sure they're not loaded with sugar. You got to count calories, because remember, if you get above the 1,250 calories, what happens is the fact that the Slenderiix just doesn't work as well. You want to have the lower caloric intake with the Slenderiix and accelerate so that you release that fat. Someone asked, what about coffee and salad dressing? Sure, you can use coffee. Tea is great. Just be careful what you add to it. That's a thing. And this, it's calories. Now, salad dressings, absolutely. But, I like vinegar and oil, or some of the that have the good fat. And so this PowerPoint will be available to anybody to share to your people, your team. If you're trying to create a team, and I'm going to get it up as soon as I get done here. RX will be working on it, and it will be available for available 24/7. If we're supposed to eat 2 low glycemic snacks, what are good examples? Okay, that could be a low-fat cottage cheese and an apple. It could be a low-fat string cheese and an apple. It could be raw almonds. It could be, and in fact, in my Healthy for Life book, I give a month of every day 2 different low glycemic snacks on my website. I actually label those out. I share that in detail, what you can have. So I give a lot of recipes. We're going to give a lot of recipes for the drinks. I'm telling you, you take the Pure Nourish, you start throwing some sweet cherries, frozen sweet cherries in that with almond milk. Man, it's great. I mean, and we're going to share this. We're all working at this together. People, obese kids that have thyroid problems can take this product. Now, obviously, there's no problem. We want their thyroid to be controlled. Kids, you need to get, if they're younger children, we need to get their parents involved. Parents control a lot, and if you don't have the parents, especially with younger kids, that's something, that we have. So this is something that we need to reconsider. Now, if you've been skipping meals as a regular part of your daily routine, will eating 3 meals a day counter the weight loss? Absolutely not. There are studies that show. In fact, this is one of the hardest things I do with a Healthy for Life program. You've got to eat regular. That's why we want you to eat 5 times a day. There are studies out there that if you eat twice a day, the same amount of calories, that you gain a significant amount of weight. Where if the study went on, the people the other group ate those same calories 17 times a day. Now, I don't recommend eating 17 times a day, but they lost a significant amount of weight. When you eat too much at one meal, what happens is your body goes into a little storage process, and that's not good. So that is key. You want to be eating 3 meals a day and 2 snacks. If people are in phase 2, yes, those kashi cereals, steel cut oats, slow cooked, rolled oats are fine. The more man processes food, the higher the glycemic index. But we teach that in phase 2. talked about, should we, if we're eating a snack, trade fruit such as grapefruit for a veggie such as cucumber? No, no, have the grapefruit, have apple, have oranges. You see, everyone's afraid of fructose, but it's a very low amount, low glycemic, and you're not going to gain weight. And it's low caloric. It's a wonderful. Plus, it's got a lot of fiber, vitamins, minerals, antioxidants. How much protein? I think it's very important that every meal have some protein. And the snacks. Now, it isn't absolute. A lot of times you'll have an apple or an orange, or some people want to snack a little more frequently. But having protein, and there's a reason. Protein stimulates the release of a hormone that makes you feel more satisfied. And I talk about this in my Healthy for Life program. So protein is good. Now, is there any cautions for people who are taking pharmaceutical drugs or prescription medication? No. The Slenderiiz and Accelerate will not affect it. Now, if you're taking a drug called Coumadin or warfarin, that's a blood thinner, there may be some concern with the vitamin K in the optimals. However, in my practice, I don't worry about it, but you might find that they do, and if that happens, then that might be a consideration, but none of the other drugs. What if I'm just not hungry at certain meal time and skip a meal? Would I plateau? I don't like skipping meals. And I tell you, I'd rather you eat maybe an apple or just something, even if you're not hungry, because trust me, you get into this a couple weeks, 7 to 10 days, 2 weeks, your appetite's going to be so down that you're going to find that this just is not, you're just not hungry. You're going to have trouble getting in your 1,250 calories, but you have to do it. It's there. Now, I shouldn't say that. On the Slenderiiz, we want to limit it. If someone wants to go less because they're not hungry and they want to miss a meal or two, I would still take the Slenderiiz, maybe just eat lightly. You can do that, but that's important. Now, someone asked, what about adjust if you're doing a lot of working out? That is a very good question. You are allowed on our program that if you are really an exerciser, someone that's exercising a lot, you can figure out the amount of exertion in calories. Now, you'd have to go above the 30 minutes because we've worked that out to give you an additional 250 calories. But what we are recommending is figure out how many calories you're burning with that extra workout, and you can consume 70% of that in calories. Let's say, for example, you burn an extra 1,000 calories in workout above the 30 minutes of aerobic activity we're recommending. Well, you could take in 700 extra calories. So 70% of that is very important. What about someone who's diabetic? What should you do? Well, I will tell you, your blood sugars will drop, and they'll, over time, now they may not drop tomorrow or the next day, but over time, you'll find those dropping. So what I would say is that you really need to watch your blood sugars. If you're taking insulin or medication, check your blood sugars at least 4 times a day. And then you have to adjust your medication if you start to get low blood sugar. I can't tell you the number of people that I've had and how they've done as far as this goes. So just check your blood sugars, adjust your medication, talk to your doctor, but I'll guarantee you, your blood sugars will come down. You'll be less dependent on medication. That's what this whole thing is about. Even if you have prediabetes or you're not taking medication, then you don't have to be as careful, but your blood sugars will come down. What about someone who has thyroid gland problems? If they don't have an overactive thyroid gland, that's something that is a problem. But if they have an underactive thyroid gland problem, it's not a problem to do the program. If it's overactive, they should probably get permission from their doctor. Somebody asked, is losing a pound a day unhealthy? No, it's not if you do this program, this approach, because it's a healthy diet. You're getting in those good, low glycemic carbohydrates, the good fats, the good proteins. You're eating. It's not a starvation diet. This is not a starvation diet. All we're doing is mobilizing. In fact, in my before RX's Slenderiix and Accelerate, I could get this much weight loss even with my program. You start to combine the programs, I think it's going to actually, we're going to get more weight loss. But losing weight this way, you just start releasing fat. It just starts coming off when your insulin levels drop because you're able to use calories normally. If you forget to take your drops before eating your meal, don't worry about it. I wouldn't, you know, you could take them then, or you could just wait and then take them. I like to get them in 3 times a day. We're not gonna be perfect at it, so that's key. Now, someone asked about Restorix. I am going to have another. In fact, I think my next talk, which is going to be the second Tuesday in June. It'll be June 12th. I'm going to talk about how you can combine all of this with the detox and using Restorix. I'm going to just give you real details on using Restorix, and so I will work with that. I tell you, I'm running out of time. I'm going to cut it off. I'm going to answer 2 more questions here, but I really, you know, go with that. Now, if you use 10 drops of the Slenderiix and 15, what I have been told is that your Slenderiix and your Accelerate will last 28 days. How long does you know, if you use 2 scoops of Pure Nourish, you'll need 4 bags of Pure Nourish to last 28 days. That'll give you 56 meals, and at 2 scoops. If you use 3 scoops, obviously it's not going to last as long. You're going to have more calories, so that's the key. I would be drinking water all day long, and you're going to have to check on the cost, everything else, you know, as far as that goes. And I just think everybody will be excited. Now, it is important to go ahead and you know, look at everything. Look at your weight, do your measurements, take your pictures. Testimonies are going to be key. But I will tell you, here's the key. This is not just a weight loss, fat loss program. It is different than Body by Vi. You know, it's different than the Atkins approach, Weight Watchers, Diet Center, Jenny Craig. What we are doing, this is healthy lifestyles. It just happen to have a side effect of fat loss, because you're actually improving the root cause, which is insulin resistance. Slenderiix and the Accelerate are just optimizing, accelerating this whole process. So I want to thank you for joining me. I hope you enjoyed this. I will work to get this up and RX, so it's up there available for anybody to listen to, parts of it, all of it. And I want to thank you again, and we'll get together on June 12th, and we'll talk about Restorix and how to optimize a detox for everybody. Thank you.